How I feel about you, think you wish you went, but we don't really want to, I just wanna get away.
Findings appear in the journal Sleep Advances. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health, Lisa Brady, Fox News.
The National Weather Service says above average temperatures will continue across the west and central U.S., where some temperature records are possible. And Arctic air will begin to erode in the east tomorrow. That's a wrap on news for this hour. See more at afm.net.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Nurse Mama Show, prescribing hope for healthy families here on American Family Radio. Here's your host, Professor, Pediatric Nurse Practitioner, and Mom of 4, Dr. Jessica Peck.
Well, hey there, friends. Merry Christmas. Welcome to my favorite time of day, my favorite time of year. We've got a great dose of hope for you. But
this week is pretty exciting because we have an exciting opportunity for you. If you are a regular listener of the show, you will be familiar with another show here on American Family Radio called Hannah's Heart that walks families through infertility, child loss, miscarriage, all of those things that can be painful experiences sometimes in starting a family, but they have really built a beautiful community, and they're having their first ever inaugural conference in Tupelo, Mississippi in January. And this week they're running a special where you can get half off of registration, and you can go to afr.net/HHC 2026. That's Hannah's Heart Conference 2026. So someone you know needs to know about that, and I hope that you will be able to go. Maybe it would even make a great gift. But the gift that we're giving you today is a talk about parenting. Now, I am definitely in the trenches on this. I've got kids who are from high school all the way up through college and young adult. I'm in that stage of parenting, but definitely have been in the earlier stages. Remember colic like it was yesterday. Remember toddler tantrums in the middle of the grocery store like it was this morning. It can feel like I can still feel embarrassed at some of those things that happened, just that come with parenting. But in a world of today, parents can feel very overwhelmed, and it seems like every day there's something new to be afraid of. And this world is marked by anxiety and trauma and living at the speed of a smartphone. There is never any doubt a downtime. And many parents are asking the deeper question of, how do I truly connect with my child without losing myself in the process? If you're very honest, this is a question that every parent has asked themselves. Maybe you've asked yourself that as you're vacuuming crushed goldfish out of the back of a minivan, thinking, how did my life come to this? Or you're waiting up at night for a teen who's missed curfew. There are all across the spectrum of those experiences, and I'm so delighted to bring to you today our guest. She is a therapist, she's an author, she's a speaker. Her name is Tricia Thornton, and she has a book called Beyond Blessed Parenting. Now, this is really automatically caught my attention because so often we treat parenting like it's a burden, and there are challenges sometimes for sure, but it is beautiful and it is blessed. And so this book is called Beyond Blessed Parenting, Embrace These 7 Principles and Experience Authentic Connection. I think that's what every parent wants with their child. If you're invested in your parenting journey, you really want to connect. And Tricia is inviting you to something deeper than just behavior management, which so often we're guilty of, or honestly just survival parenting. And she's calling you today into authentic connection. So Tricia, welcome to the show. We are so delighted to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Tricia, let's just start with a little of your story. Just tell us a little bit of your testimony of faith and your family story and how you came to have a calling in your life to equip parents.
Yes, thank you. Well, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So I grew up in the South, and I grew up in a family where it was pretty typical. It was a mom and dad, and I have an older sister. But at about 6.5, I experienced 2 traumatic events in my little world. And I, at 6.5, didn't quite have, obviously, neurologically, I didn't have the brain circuitry to comprehend all that was going on. My grandmother was killed in our driveway in a tragic way, right in our driveway in our new home. And then 3 weeks later, we experienced a robbery and an intruder coming in our home. So right away, 6.5, my little world went from kind of what was pretty safe. I think I always had a little bit of kind of an anxious brain. I think I always was the child who had a little hard time going to sleep and a little scared of the dark and had those kind of fears. But my world shifted from that day, and fear became imprinted in every pathway of my brain. And I don't think I really grasped that, even through college at Vanderbilt and graduate school at Denver Seminary. Until I was really in Denver Seminary, my parents unfortunately had a divorce. And so when that all kind of hit, I began to realize, something has kind of been holding me back for a long time. So I began to explore it then. And my faith was growing the whole time. I grew up pretty much in a home where we went to what I call holiday church, and we would go at the big holidays, and I had a draw to church always. I kind of remember many days just feeling like that was a safe place for me. I felt very comforted, but didn't really have a connection until I was in high school. And then through an outreach ministry, I was able to really understand the personal relationship part of Christianity. And so that began to really kind of become a part of me in high school, and that grew. And so when I got to graduate school and seminary, and I really began to explore how does all this fit together, it began to really be apparent to me that, wow, fear really kind of has imprinted upon me. So then fast forward, became a therapist working with children and families, and around kind of that midlife, late 40s, 50, I began to really explore through writing, and I wrote my first book called Blessing from Fear. And that began a journey that was a beautiful journey and has continued. I have a private practice in therapy where I work with parents and do parent coaching, and I work with adults all the way down to 3-year-olds as a registered play therapist. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But it started out with those traumatic experiences. And so I really have a heart and an understanding of how trauma can imprint upon our brains. And so that's really what draws me to helping with parents and children.
Well, Tricia, I know that those things happened many years ago, but please just let me say I'm so sorry that you experienced those things. My heart just breaks for any child who experiences trauma like that. And it is sobering and heartbreaking even now to hear you say that is your story, going back, that it imprinted. And I want to sit in that word for just a minute, because you used it a few times. I actually wrote it down when you were saying it. I think,
do you like that word?
Yeah. It's a really good description of what happens sometimes when you experience something traumatic, and you feel like that fear imprints on your soul, and you try really hard to overcome it, and you try to learn coping skills, or you try just to get out of it on your own power. But how do you come to a place where what is the word, where you overcome it, where you accept it, where you cope with it, where you learn to decorate in spite of the imprint? What do you do once you have the realization that is imprinted on your soul? Like you said, we know that part of that is even imprinted on our DNA because of the way that trauma impacts us. What do you do about it when you have that realization?
Yeah. So the word that came to my mind when you were talking was choice. So we were given a beautiful brain. God created our brain with an amazing ability to choose. Even though some days it doesn't feel like you have a choice other than to maybe sit up in your bed, or maybe to get up and walk outside for 3 or 4 minutes. Sometimes we can feel really, really, really low or really hurried, and we're rushing, like at this time of year, from event to event, and everything's coming at us at kind of warp speed. I loved how you said in the intro at
speed of a smartphone.
Thank you. That was so good. Yeah, speed of a smartphone. That's exactly how we feel.
Yeah.
But we do have to remember, and this is where I think Romans 12:2 really, really has a hold on me. I love that verse. I use it throughout both of my books, is that we were given the power to renew our mind. And so we do have the power to choose, even in the darkest moments. And there are some days that all we can think of positively is that maybe we like the socks that we have on. I a lot of times use that with children. They'll come in and I'll say, hey, tell me 2, pretty good things and 2 not so good things. And sometimes they look at me and they're like, I don't know, I don't really have any, pretty good. And so I was like, well, let's break it down. Did you like your snack today? No. Okay, well, did you was a friend nice to you today? And they may say yes or no. And eventually we get down and I'm like, do you like dogs? Do you have one? And they're like, well, yeah, okay. And I'm like, okay, then that's what you're thankful for today. So sometimes we have to kind of shift our mindset, and it takes a lot of intentionality. And as parents, just kind of from a parent perspective, there's nothing more triggering. When you were talking about the meltdown in the grocery store, there's nothing more triggering than our children to us. Even really traumatic losses and trauma experiences, sometimes our kids push our buttons in ways that we didn't even realize. And so sometimes it does feel really, for us as parents, we can remember that we do have a choice. We do have the power, because our God gave us this beautiful brain, and with the ability to mindset shift. And that's hard to do. But throughout the Beyond Less, I give some really good solution, like transformative tools that allow you to know how to do that.
So the funny thing is, Trisha, we don't want those tools. We have been poisoned in some ways, I think, by society in wanting instant gratification. We want an instant fix. We don't want to do the work that is required sometimes. And I think what you're saying about choices is so important, and that's important for our mindset, because the way that I say it a lot of times to kids when I'm talking to them is, hey, what happened to you is not your fault. But how you heal from it is your choice. And how you choose to heal from it is your choice. And we can give ourselves such a hard time when we're not instantly cured, when we're not instantly over the fear, when we can't instantly erase that imprint. But we can celebrate the process of renewing our mind. I love that you brought that up from Romans 12. It's one of my favorite verses about being transformed by the renewing of our mind. And it comes through those little choices. Like today, okay, we're having the meltdown in the grocery store. Like I'm going to choose to leave or to be calm or whatever it is, that little choice in the moment. And Trisha, I can't believe we're already coming up on our first break here. But when we come back, I really want to dive more into some of the guidance that you give in the book and some of those tools that we desperately need. I think that parents need to envision it like they have a tool belt, like a master tool belt. Absolutely. And you learn, you develop these tools like, okay, all right, I may need to bring down the hammer right now. Okay, this is going to require a little more precision. I need some pliers or whatever it is. And my husband is probably laughing at me right now, thinking she's trying to do a tool analogy. How cute, but it is very true, because I think, back to your experiences of fear, Trisha, and that was in a world really before the smartphone was happening. And now what I see is there's an undercurrent of fear that is running rampant in families. Parents are so afraid that their kids are going to make destructive choices. They're really afraid they're going to walk away from their faith. Kids are desperately afraid of what's going to happen in the world. Everything seems really